Tonight's CBS late movie, Magnum, followed by McCloud, will begin immediately following a CBS News special report on today's primaries. CBS News coverage of Campaign 84 continues. Tonight, the New York primary. Reporting from CBS News election headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good evening. Walter Mondale has won big, the day's big prize, the New York primary and most of New York's delegates. Gary Hart wins the solace of a consolation prize only, the no delegates Wisconsin Strictly Beauty Contest primary. But a Fritzkrieg for Walter Mondale tonight in New York.
In the words of a song, I know that if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere.
Biggest primary trophy yet, biggest overall except for California, biggest of the Frost Belt state primaries, Spring and Walter Mondale busting out all over in New York. And Mondale supporters celebrating their Broadway melody Neon Lights victory here over Gary Hart and Jesse Jackson in a New York primary that sometimes sounded more like a New York City street fight. There were 252 delegates at stake in New York tonight, and the far and away frontrunner in this chock full of delegates primary is Walter Mondale. Gary Hart indeed had a close fight for second place against Jesse Jackson. The Empire State, largest of the state primaries so far. The vote count has been rolling in for better than 2 hours now, and with 94% of the precincts in and reported, Walter Mondale has won. On the order, his current totals show 46, 28, 26 over Hart and Jackson. This is with 94% of the precincts reporting, and that gives you some indication of just how big Mondale's victory has been. With 252 delegates at stake, our CBS News estimate is that Mondale will wind up getting 133 of them, Gary Hart 72, and Jesse Jackson about 47. Those numbers may change, but we think they will change only slightly. By and large, all in all, this was Walter Mondale's night to shine. Upstate, downstate, city, suburban, urban, and urbane. Bruce Morton is here to analyze Mondale's Big Apple appeal and how Mondale put all the pieces together. Bruce, let's look them over.
Dan, when you win, of course, and when you win big, as Walter Mondale did tonight, you win with groups you've often lost in other states. So if you look at the basic numbers, you see Mondale beating Gary Hart among voters aged 30 to 44, those young, upwardly mobile professionals who've been the core of the Hart Army elsewhere. But there may be an explanation, and the explanation is that Mondale, like Edward Kennedy 4 years ago, did very well with Jewish voters who are uniquely important in New York, maybe a quarter of the vote in a Democratic primary here. Mondale beat Hart among Jews better than 2 to 1. Now look at the yumpies, those young, upwardly mobile professionals, the 30 to 44-year-old age group. Mondale wins big among Jews in this group. He's even with Hart among white, non-Jewish voters. College graduates, same thing. Mondale is the big winner with Jewish voters in that group. Hart wins narrowly among non-Jewish whites. So Mondale's success with the young professionals is linked to the fact that in New York, a lot of those young professionals are Jewish. And it came despite Hart's fervent efforts to portray himself as Israel's friend. Jesse Jackson, simply astounding support among blacks, including suburban blacks, 87% of the black voters in our exit poll, but little support among whites, no rainbow yet. Mondale also won among those voters who'd made up their minds in the last 3 days, which may confirm the general view that he did well in 2 recent televised debates. Nuclear weapons and worry about them was a major issue here. Mondale actually led Hart among people worried about nuclear weapons, but again, his edge was with Jewish voters to whom that issue was important. What all this does is to raise some interesting questions about Pennsylvania, which votes next week. In some ways, it's a lot like New York, lots of old industry, for instance, but it is not like New York because the Jewish vote there is drastically smaller. Dan?
Bruce, did Gary Hart carry any section of the demographics in this vote?
Not really. If you leave out the Jews, he does well with some of the groups he's always done well with, but this is really an across-the-board Mondale win.
Thank you, Bruce. With his overwhelming victory tonight, Walter Mondale may have found the biggest boon in New York since the Dutch bought Manhattan. The primary results pointed to a bright new day in the Mondale campaign, but the former vice president indicated he's eager to avoid a troublesome old tag. The size of this win would indicate to me that you were again very clearly the front runner. Agree?
No, I don't. I think we've had a very good day because I think we were able to get the debate on the question that matters: who would make the best president? Where do we want to take this country? But this is only one day. I think this is a tough fight. We now go to Pennsylvania. My guess is we're probably dead even there, and I'm going to start the same debate tomorrow morning in Pennsylvania.
You don't plan a change of campaign strategy. You're not going to pull back.
No, I'm going to, in other words, this is a tough campaign. I'm going to talk about where I want to take this country, why I think I'm ready to be that president, the key issues as I see them, of peace, of arms control, of a policy that will restore America's competitive posture, a strong new initiative for fairness in American life, and I will define the differences between myself and my opponents as we go down the road.
Another weak showing among blacks, about 12% of the vote. Now, you're talking about a quarter of the Democratic vote. When are we going to see you make significant inroads into this very important part of the Democratic vote?
Well, first of all, I congratulate Reverend Jackson. He ran another good race tonight. He ran well, and particularly in the black community, he ran well. But I think I'm not exaggerating when I say that the black community also likes Walter Mondale.
After the debate at Columbia University, you met at least briefly with Reverend Jackson. Can you tell us what you talked about?
Yes. I told him that I thought I'd done a very good job in that debate, and then he told me he thought he'd done a good job. We shook hands and we agreed.
Did he accept your offer of the vice presidency on a Mondale ticket?
Somehow that didn't come up.
Let me talk about Gary Hart. In your heart of hearts now, don't you think you have Gary Hart on the ropes?
No, I think it's very even, and I think it depends on where this debate goes. I think this is a good night tonight, and I feel good about it because I've been able to finally get this debate on the question of who would be the best president for the reasons I've indicated earlier. But this debate now goes to Pennsylvania.
You said once, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you believed it would go all the way to the convention. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance of it.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Dan.
In Wisconsin tonight, no delegates at stake in the non-binding primary there, but still a very close beauty contest victory for Gary Hart by the percentages. With 67% of the vote in precincts reporting in Wisconsin, Gary Hart has won the Wisconsin beauty contest primary. He's now has about a 3 percentage point lead over Walter Mondale, Jesse Jackson running well back in third place. Now, on the Republican side of the primary in Wisconsin, 69% of the precincts reporting. Should Ronald Reagan be renominated? Yes, 94%. Should Ronald Reagan be renominated? No, 6%. 78 Wisconsin delegates to the Democratic Convention will be at stake this Saturday. None tonight, but this next Saturday, 78 will be at stake in Wisconsin caucusing. Now, for tonight, it's the chock full of delegates New York primary that may have Gary Hart feeling some political pain. Hart's thoughts on losing in New York in a moment.
This portion of CBS News coverage of Campaign 84 is sponsored by Stress Tabs, the vitamin for people who burn the candle at both ends, and by Citicorp Diners Club, when you mean business.
When you burn the candle at both ends, there's a vitamin just for you. Advanced Formula Stress Tabs with biotin, a vitamin not found in other stress formulas. A vitamin essential to help convert food to energy. When you burn the candle at both ends, support your diet with Advanced Formula Stress Tabs with biotin, the official stress formula vitamin of the 1984 Winter Olympics.
When General Electric was choosing a charge card to issue to their executives, they needed one honored at hotels, restaurants, and airlines worldwide. One that gave their executives financial freedom with its flexible spending limit. One that's now backed by a financial leader, Citicorp. The card they chose to plug into was the Diners Club card. So apply for one, because the bright idea that works for the executives at GE will work for you. Citicorp Diners Club, when you mean business.
Well, it didn't seem much balm tonight for Gary Hart's distant second-place finish in New York. And from his election night headquarters in the Roosevelt Hotel, the candidate looked at the weak reception given what was supposed to be a strong point. If there is any place in this country that stands for new ideas, new trends, receptiveness to fashion and new ideas, it's New York. What happened? Where did Gary Hart go wrong in New York?
Well, I'm not sure I went wrong, Mr. Rather. I was up against the entire old guard and political establishment in this state, the governor, the mayor, the senator, labor leaders. If there's any state in the Union where political establishment has an impact, it's in New York State. And we came into the state way behind, and I think we have acquitted ourselves well.
Walter Mondale has been attacking you, and attacking you hard, ever since New Hampshire. Now, he said tonight that he wasn't going to change tactics or change strategy, that yes, he agreed it was working, he was going to continue it. How long can you stand up under that kind of pounding?
Well, I can stand up for a long, long time. I've been pounded before. I think that's not the issue. I think the issue is how long will the Democratic voters of this country put up with it. If they think that a candidate will get the nomination of this party by running a negative campaign, or more importantly, have a chance to beat Ronald Reagan by running a negative campaign against another Democrat, I would be mightily surprised. I don't think the majority of Democrats in this country are going to sustain that effort. I've won as many primary and caucus states as Walter Mondale. We've essentially evenly divided the first half of this race. I intend to come on strong in the second half.
You've already said, and you've said several times, you don't like to pinpoint any one state, but you can't win the nomination without winning some states ahead. Where can you next win? States
like Nebraska, Oregon, California, New York, Texas, and a variety of other states of that sort are states that don't have the dominant effect of the political establishment that New York and Illinois do. And I think that by itself will give us a much better chance. And I will have another 4 or 6 weeks to make my case, and I intend to make that case very positively.
Now, in effort to put in perspective today's win for Walter Mondale in New York with the overall race for delegates. At the Democrats' nominating convention in San Francisco this summer, it will take 1,967 delegate votes to win. Our CBS News estimate is that right now, from all sources, including the results of today's New York primary, Walter Mondale has about 896 delegate votes, Gary Hart 528, Jesse Jackson 141. We'll have more about today's New York primary in a moment.
To sleep, set sail on a voyage into the night.
Night voyages on spring air. Our back supporter mattress is a unique support system. Exclusive springs form a special health center that's a dream to sleep on.
The most beautiful nights are on spring air.
Night voyages on spring air. Sleep first class.
Under this snow, there's more oil than in Saudi Arabia. 20 years ago, Sun Company developed a process to get oil from tar sands. Since then, a lot's developed around here. Jobs, a community, hockey teams. The energy's not just under the snow, it's everywhere, even on the ice. At Sun, we think that putting our energy back into a community is just as important as getting it out.
Where there's sun, there's energy.
Why American business trusts Emery.
When my designs are late, buyers don't give us a second chance. Emery's international service goes door to door, fast.
Emery delivers all our tapes to the networks, because if they're not there, they don't get on air. And guess who pays for it?
Sending hundreds of contracts across the country is a huge responsibility. We share that responsibility with Emery.
Over 1 million customers trust Emery to deliver. Call Emery. We've earned the trust of American business.
Recently, when some of America's top corporations were choosing a charge card for their executives, one card stood out. Corning Glass clearly saw the benefits of a card honored worldwide. United Technologies was very high on the financial freedom of its flexible spending limit. And because it's from Citicorp, it appealed to the hard-driving executives at Mack Trucks. Apply for a Diners Club card, because what works for the executives at these corporations will work for you. Citicorp Diners Club, when you mean business.
Standing by tonight at the candidates' ballrooms here in New York City are CBS News correspondents Eric Ingberg and Susan Spencer. Eric, you're covering the Gary Hart campaign. I would think not just the fact that Gary Hart lost in New York, but the size of the loss. would make joy there about as rare as, say, free money. Do they see anything encouraging about this?
Wisconsin, Dan. There's a lot of talk about Wisconsin here tonight, but of course among the political professionals, they know that the Wisconsin decision tonight didn't mean anything. No, there isn't much to be encouraged about. Not even some of the senators' more ebullient supporters are saying that there was anything good that happened to them in New York. It has taught them a lesson, however, Dan, and that is that they realize that Mondale has been quite effective in the way he has attacked Hart over the last few weeks. In fact, there is an understanding here that Hart has really been on the defensive with this campaign since 4 days before the Illinois primary, and he's got to get off the defensive. And the first way that he is going to try to accomplish that is he is simply going to stop responding to Mondale's criticisms and attacks and going to try to focus the attention on his own program.
But Senator Hart told us tonight, Eric, that he is not going to start a negative campaign. He is not going to start attacking himself.
Well, he is going to, I guess, pretend that Mondale's attacks don't exist. He is going to talk about his own themes, he says. And the way he put it to us on the airplane coming back from Pennsylvania tonight was that he is going to see how long it takes Mondale to get more positive in his message. But they've really got to get off the defensive, and they understand that.
Susan Spencer, how long is it going to take former Vice President Mondale to get off of the negative campaigning and the attacks, or does he indeed plan to do it ever?
Well, they don't exactly phrase it that way. They talk about presenting the contrast between Mondale and Senator Hart. They're also convinced, I think, that the public likes a fighter, and that the public didn't know maybe that Mondale would react this way. Mondale himself has said that people interpreted his failure to respond to everybody in the beginning as weakness, and, you know, why fix what seems to be working? I don't think that he will stop that at all. He leaves himself open to criticism that he goes too far at times, but the evidence tonight doesn't convince anybody here that that's done much damage.
Susan, unfortunately, I have only a few seconds left, but doesn't this really put Mondale back in the front-runner status?
Well, you heard what he said. The last thing anybody wants is that. It's very hard to avoid, and we all remember what happened to him the last time he had that tag. So he will try, of course, to pretend like this is still very much a horse race.
We may call him a front runner, but he won't. Thank you very much, Susan Spencer and Eric Ingberg. In a moment, we'll be talking with Jesse Jackson, whose vigorous performance today has given this big New York primary race another dimension of energy and meaning.
Torture test after torture test, day and night. The wear and tear of 5 tough years in just 15 weeks at the General Motors Proving Grounds.
All yours, Brenda.
Even if you never put your GM car through anything like this, it's good to know we did. Nobody sweats the details like GM.
The widely acclaimed TRS-80 Model 100 portable computer from Radio Shack is now on sale, $200 off. Its built-in programs help you organize and keep track of appointments and personal files, do word processing, graphics, or send important information to your office, even after hours. It goes anywhere, including on your desk. $200 off TRS-80 Model 100 on sale from $599 to $799, only at Radio Shack and Radio Shack Computer Centers.
At Channel 5, we know how important a good education is to you and your child. That's why we take a little extra time to tell the education news that matters the most. That includes the good news about scholastic achievement and great moments. We're proud the Tennessee Education Association recently expressed confidence in our extra coverage by giving us a School Bell Award. When it comes to news about education, we're the friend you can turn to with confidence. Eyewitness News on Channel 5.
Attend the Channel 5 Health Fair in your community.
As Chief of Police, I'm proud that the National Police Force is taking an active role in promoting good health. Our men and women are giving professional support to the Channel 5 Health Fair site at Rivergate Mall on April 14th from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. I urge you to see that your family attends a Channel 5 Health Fair.
The Channel 5 Health Fair at Rivergate Mall is April 14th, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Voter turnout in today's New York primary was up sharply from 1980, but the turnout was up most of all in New York City's mostly black precincts, where in fact many voters were still lined up long after the polls were scheduled to close. The numbers tell it best. In mostly white precincts, turnout was up 25% over 1980's turnout. In mostly black precincts, a 100% increase, double 1980. Joining us now in New York City, Jesse Jackson, who despite his very strong showing in the urbanmost New York City tonight, is still searching for that elusive melting pot of gold at the end of his Rainbow Coalition. Good evening, Reverend Jackson.
Good evening.
Looking good, and congratulations on an impressive showing again.
Thank you very much.
An impressive showing, especially among blacks. But you know, reporters, they're going to ask some nagging questions, such as, you still haven't cracked as much as 10% among white voters, and New York was the place to do it. Why didn't it happen here?
Well, it's very difficult to say. We did get a substantial number of Latino voters and a substantial number of Asian voters. So far, the white vote count is a bit elusive. I might add, however, that we're getting more white votes, particularly from peace activists and environmentalists, than, say, Gary Hart is getting from black voters at this point. The Rainbow is very difficult to organize because people have been separated for so long. And I really feel that we're growing and we're going to get there.
But you're pursuing the Rainbow Coalition increasingly in black communities, aren't you? Can you blame whites for not voting for you if you've virtually given up going after their votes?
Well, that's not really true. We continue to go to the marketplace. We go to colleges and the universities. And the measure we go to where we are invited, where we have an audience that will accept us. You know, historically, Dan, black voters are far more generous toward whites than whites are toward blacks. But I'm so impressed with the growth of this campaign. You know, we did not buy one newspaper ad or one TV commercial, and yet our message was able to penetrate. I guess at this point, given how substantial our showing is, if we maintain the strength to move toward a substantial ability to cut this military budget and have an urban policy that can train our youth to end these slums and put America back to work, that's getting through. And the more successful the black vote is, the more the tracks of the voters fall. If blacks vote in great numbers, it means progressive whites can win because they have new allies. It means that Latinos can win. It means that women can win. And so this black vote is so overwhelming and traumatizing now. As the political pundits analyze it, it will attract for us new allies and new associates.
Reverend Jackson, again, congratulations on an impressive showing in New York, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's take a look at where we have been thus far in the up and down primary and caucus campaign. The states won by Gary Hart in blue. Those won by Walter Mondale in red. Those uncommitted with the yellow. And where do we go from here? The next big barrier, Pennsylvania, April 10th. 1 week from today, 172 delegates at stake in Pennsylvania. Bob Schieffer looks ahead to what to expect in that state.
Here, where American-style democracy was invented, the prize is another big one. 172 delegates will be at stake when Pennsylvanians vote here next Tuesday. And in this state steeped in history, local politicians say the issues will be of the basic pocketbook variety. Jobs and the economy. They say issues such as the nuclear freeze, which cut deeply in some New England states, won't be much of a factor here. Not with the steel industry facing some of its roughest times ever, and unemployment here higher than the national average. Gary Hart's strongest support here, as elsewhere, is thought to be in the suburbs and the outlying areas. Blacks are a big part of Pennsylvania's Democratic vote, but doing as well among black voters here as he did in New York may be more difficult for Jesse Jackson, since Philadelphia's popular black mayor, Wilson Goode, is campaigning hard for Mondale. And Mondale is also counting heavily on union help to get out the vote.
Were you going to vote for Mondale?
Volatile political year, few are making any predictions or taking anything for granted, no matter what political camp they belong to. But Philadelphia's Mayor Goode told us this afternoon that he believes Walter Mondale will win Pennsylvania by 5 percentage points at least, and he said that before the results in New York were known. Dan?
Thank you, Bob. With us now to talk about what happened today in New York, my colleague and old friend Bill Moyers. Bill, sometimes one feels, since these are primarily Democratic primaries, that one's about as out of place as an elk in a phone booth to start to raise Ronald Reagan's name. But given how hard Hart and Mondale have been going at one another, what about the hypothesis that Ronald Reagan is really the big winner?
Well, if the president looks at the CBS New York Times poll, he has to be a little discouraged that only 1 in 7 of the Democrats who voted today said they would vote for Reagan against Mondale or Hart in November, and that's a lot fewer than said so in Illinois. However, if the president looks at history, you'll take comfort in a couple of small footnotes. First of all, no one has ever said that as New York goes, so goes the nation. In fact, in the last 4 presidential years, the Democrats who won the New York primary failed to win the White House in November. So this is not a state that is prefiguring what's going to happen out there in November.
That's a pretty astonishing fact, isn't it?
It is. You take McCarthy, McGovern, Kennedy, and Jackson, and Scoop Jackson, all won the primaries or the delegates from New York over the last 4 presidential years. 3 of them didn't even get the nomination. So New York is old Democratic politics at its fullest, coalition politics, ethnic politics. That's not the way the nation goes. Second, if this long, protracted battle between Hart and Mondale continues, the winner will be campaigning in a Red Cross ambulance in November because they're walking wounded already. And if you remember, Dan, that in 1980, Kennedy and Carter fought bitterly and meanly and lost. The Democrats lost in November. In 1976, Ford and Reagan fought just as bitterly as Hart and Mondale have here, and the Republicans lost in 76. It's healthy for a party to have a good, clean fight, but recent history says a dirty fight, a mean fight in which both men keep cutting each other down to the other's level doesn't bode well for the party in November. So if Reagan looks at that kind of record, he says, I didn't do too badly. One other thing. In a strange kind of way, the president's decision this week, his announcement that he would veto a congressional resolution that moves the capital of Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Excuse me, to move the U.S. Embassy.
To move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. His statement that he would veto that made him look like he was above politics, playing the statesman, whereas Hart and Mondale here were both sort of grubbing around, if I can use that term, to tell the Jewish vote, we'll do it as soon as we get to the White House. The president may have emerged from this looking more presidential, in contrast to 2 men trying to be president.
Thank you, Bill. Still a long way to go
until
November. A final look now at a Mondale, New York victory that made applesauce of his opponents in the Big Apple State. With 96% of the precincts reporting, the indication is not only has Mondale won, but that he has won with a margin of about 18% over Gary Hart, and indeed Gary Hart has finished second statewide in New York, but by a breathtakingly close margin over Jesse Jackson, primarily thanks to Jesse Jackson's strong showing in New York City. Now, of New York's 252 delegates at stake today, our CBS News estimate is that Walter Mondale will wind up getting about 133 of them. Gary Hart will get about 72, and that Jackson will get about 47. How does that translate overall to the National Democratic Nominating Convention? 1,967 needed to win from all sources, including today's New York vote. CBS News estimates that Mondale has 896, Hart 528, and Jesse Jackson overall from all sources now has about 141 delegate votes to the convention. And so tonight, a no doubt about it victory for Walter Mondale in the biggest of Phase 2, the Snowbelt State primaries. A delegation prize second only to California's in June, second to none so far in Campaign 84. A victory for Mondale, but not by any means final victory in a so far seesaw battle that continues week to week, head to head, Hart to Mondale, with Jackson a strong third force. Next week, the next key to the nomination in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania. For CBS News, Dan Rather, election headquarters in New York. Good night.
No, it's just my keys.
Could you empty all of your keys?
Wait a minute, Sue, do you have the traveler's checks?
No.
No?
I thought you had.
I got news for you. I can't find them.
It was your keys.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
What's the problem?
We've lost our traveler's checks.
You can get a refund the American Express machine down the hall.
No, but
they weren't. They weren't American Express.
Oh, they weren't. What time's your flight?
You know, nobody but American Express can give refunds of traveler's check machines in most major U.S. airports. Don't leave home without them.
Do you want to buy a phone? It's cheaper than AT&T.
What you really need is cheap long distance.
And of course, our business systems are cheaper than AT&T.
You won't get anything this cheap from AT&T.
Everyone's saying they're cheaper than AT&T.
Cheap?
But nobody's saying they're better. All they can say is that they're cheaper. To which we say, you get what you pay for.
This portion of CBS News coverage of Campaign 84 was sponsored by General Motors. Extra time, extra effort, and attention to every detail. GM is committed to excellence. And by AT&T, we're reaching out in new directions. This is CBS.
Attention, all Circuit City employees. The moment we've been working for is here. Your weight training will be put to the test because